I guess we will stand for the flag salute and the prayer.
You're good. Oh, stop.
Okay, we'll call this meeting of the regular meeting of the Ottawa City Commission meeting. It is 10 o'clock, May the 20th. And I will ask the city clerk to read the disclosure required for these offsite meetings.
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. I'll be providing information for remote access to today's meeting, as well as procedural guidelines that will be followed throughout. Due to social distancing and the prohibition of a gathering of 10 or more people to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, physical access to the City Commission meeting will be restricted. In accordance with Kansas Open Meetings Act, COMA, the meeting can be viewed live on channel 23 and via Facebook Live, or listened to by dialing 312-626-6799 and entering meeting ID code 957-956-5225#. That information can be found at the top of today's agenda. Guidelines for this meeting are as follows. Each member of the public, staff, or presenter is required to state the individual's name and title, if any, each time the individual begins speaking or voting, so that the individual can be identified by remote listeners or observers. Citizens that submitted comments by 8:30 a.m. today to public comments at ottawaks.gov were given to the City Commission to be read during public comment or during discussion on an agenda item. The Commission must describe at the beginning of the meeting the process that will be used for a closed or executive meeting pursuant to KSA 75-4319 and amendments thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I would ask you to call the roll of commissioners.
Mayor Wygand,
Present.
Commissioner Kaler,
Present.
Commissioner Crowley,
Present.
Commissioner Skidmore,
Present.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Present.
Okay, we do have everyone present. I want to welcome all of those who are with us today, either on Facebook Live or on the phone with us in these unusual circumstances with this Zoom meeting. Now, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for Commissioner Skidmore to give the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
Yeah.
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
One
nation,
nation under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
indivisible, and
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all. Commissioner Skidmore.
Yes. I just want to, actually, I'm going to read part of a prayer today. I've got this prime time with God. It's a daily reflections. I get this on my phone every morning, and I thought this prayer was particularly appropriate for today. Let's pray. Dear Father God, thank you for opening your arms and welcoming me to come to you, to find forgiveness in you, to find rest in you, to find freedom in you, to have an abundant life in you. I cry out to you, you know, for those who are heavy on my heart. Pray for those who are going through the fire and those who are going through the valleys. I pray for those who face difficulties and those who have come through trials and are triumphant because of you. Today I lift up in prayer those who are battling health issues, as well as those who are facing job loss and financial challenges. I pray for your grace and your mercy, your peace, and love, your hand upon each of their lives. Father, as we now commit this time to you, this meeting, let's pray for special direction and guidance in each of us, wherever we're located, and may these decisions be honoring and glorifying to you. Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Skidmore. With that, we'll go to the consent agenda, which include the minutes from the regular meetings of March 18th and April 1st, and the study sessions of March 30. Is there any discussion of those or a motion to approve those? That's consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve. Commissioner Jorgensen.
Commissioner Crowley will second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved unanimously. We'll move to our regular agenda. Are there any public comments called for today?
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. We did not have any public comments submitted for today's meeting.
Okay, we'll dispense on reading that. And item 9 is the declaration. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Everyone is silent, so we'll assume that is okay. New business, Madam Clerk.
Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. A request to endorse the Kansas Independent College Finance Authority, KICFA, Revenue Anticipation Notes 2020 for Ottawa University.
Clark Ribardi and Tom Corley of Ottawa University will be with us today to comment. And through the Kansas Independent College Authority, Ottawa University annually draws on short-term financing to help the university bridge the summer months. The city's bonding authority is used as a conduit to allow this financing, but there is no obligation placed upon the city. This debt belongs strictly to the university. Is Clark or Tom available for comment? We have done this each year to aid in their funding and what they need to do during this time. So is there a motion to approve their request?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Skidmore, I move that we approve item number 10.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Kaler will second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, would you, Madam Clerk, call the roll?
Yes, this is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Wygand?
And I vote yes too. Motion approved. Moving on to item 11.
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. Resolution to approve new CDBG grant, Community Development Block Grant, and implications for existing incentives for local revolving loan fund.
Wendy Lee and Susan Gallimore of Southeast Kansas Regional Planning Commission are with us today to talk about this. This grant application would allow the city, if funded, to grant money to small businesses whose employees are 51% low and moderate income for working capital that have been damaged by the COVID-19 restrictions. A public hearing is scheduled for Friday, May 22nd, 2020, but these documents proposed for adoption are standard for grant applications. Would Wendy and Susan share with us their comments?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. This is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. We have kind of two issues that relate to each other under this topic. The grant that we're proposing to apply for, there's a public hearing, as you just said, on Friday. And so while we've developed our application, because we could end up receiving some comments on Friday or have further discussion, there are parts of the application that could be modified because of that hearing. But at this point, what I wanted to tell you was that our grant application would be for $300,000 for both, sorry about that, both micro grants, which are for businesses that have 5 and fewer employees, and grants to businesses that would have between 6 and 50 employees. In any of those circumstances, for the business to be eligible, 51% of the employees would need to be low to moderate income members of households. Their household income would need to be in the low to moderate income categories. And the anticipation based on the number of the $300,000 would be that we would be able to retain somewhere around 27 employees using those two categories. And this is an estimate at this point, with at least 14 of those being low to moderate income. I do want to mention that because this is forward moving and we don't yet know who those applicants would be, those numbers could change. And if we were, for example, to have 2 businesses in the larger category and fewer in the micro grants, those numbers would certainly change. And the state has indicated that we could do an amendment to reflect that, because we don't know for certain yet who those businesses might be. One of the distinct differences that we want to call out about this grant is that we often use the term grant when we're talking about the Department of Commerce's activities with us. But in the economic development category, they're always grants that are really loans, and then when they're paid back to the state. But in this case, the state has set this funding up to be 100% grant to the business, not as a loan. They would have to provide the invoices to show for the working capital expenses that they're incurring. And there are some caveats. For example, if a business has already received the PPP loans, what they're using for expenses there would not be eligible under this. So if they used payroll for that loan, then they would maybe be using inventory for this grant. But they cannot double dip, I think, is what we would want to say to the community. The idea is to help businesses survive, but to not be taken advantage of the funding either. We anticipate that the low to moderate income household numbers would be readily obtained because our current low to moderate income LMI rate for Ottawa, based on the every annual estimate, is 48.67%. So it's fairly close to the 51% now. So that's kind of the summary of the proposed grant. What we've asked you to do today relative to the proposed grant is to authorize the mayor, to pass a resolution which authorizes the grant and authorizes the mayor to sign several other documents that are all listed, that are all available to you there. And we discussed those as well on Monday. That's why we asked on Monday for that to be placed today, because those items are fairly standard. We've done other types of grants, not even economic developments, where we've also had to certify with the state that we will follow anti-displacement policies, that we will do all of the required environmental, and have our disclosures and operate per both federal and state guidelines. And that's really what the resolution authorizes today. And as I said, on Friday, when we have our public hearing, if there are comments that would lean us towards making some changes in how we were proposing to do the project, we can adjust those. I should also let you know that the city intends to use a project consultant, a grant administrator with Susan Gailmore, who is on our call, as the administrator for the new funds. That expense is limited to $15,000 by the state, but we will not be using the state's and HUD funds for this. We will be using our own economic development funds in order to ensure that the full $300,000 is available to grant out to our local businesses. Are there any questions about the proposed grant?
Commissioner Skidmore, Wendy, on this, if anybody's listening, I hope they are. So if they want to apply for these, can you kind of go through the process?
Sure. Well, yeah, so first we have to submit the grant. So I'm going to start back there, not just the process to apply. And we anticipate doing that Friday at the conclusion or shortly thereafter of the public hearing. The Department of Commerce has indicated that it'll take approximately 2 weeks for them to process applications. And then they would do grant awards, and it will take some time after that. We will have to have a contract with the state of Kansas. we will have to do some environmental. That's what our administrator will do. Execute our contract with her, etc. So there are some steps following this prospective grant. After that, we already are using a grant application, or sorry, the revolving loan application that we're currently using is similar to probably what would be used. And the process that we currently have is they make application and provide all of the required documents. And then their application is reviewed. The one thing that we really haven't fleshed out at this point is currently we have a committee that, apologize for that, that reviews and makes a recommendation. In the new grant, the commission will actually be presented with information and have to approve each grant. So that's one thing we know, but whether we would have a committee make recommendation or not, that hasn't yet been determined. Is that what you were asking, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes, and also Commissioner Skidmore again. I guess the June 8th seemed like a long ways off for some people that are struggling right now. But it sounds like to me the state requires this 2-week waiting period to review the applications. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. But currently, if somebody is wanting to apply for funds or in need at this point, we still do have a local revolving loan fund, which I'll talk about a bit more as long as we've exhausted all the questions about the proposed grant.
Okay, very good. And again, to apply, they just need to go to our website and see the link to a tab, and then the application is on there. Is that correct?
Actually, they just need to email us. But yes, if they go to our website, at the top, there's a button that has about the revolving loan fund. And so I think if they select that button, then they would be further directed.
Very good.
And I can talk a little bit more about that and its implications as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of Wendy or Susan?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I move to adopt the resolution as described in item 11 of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, this is Sarah Kaler. I will second that motion.
Okay, Mr. Mayor Tom Wygand, any other discussion? Probably will ask our economic development director and our chamber director who are online here about do you guys are seeing the need? You see people in need of grant funds and these kind of things we're trying to get out to our businesses? Paul or John?
Mayor Wygand, Commissioner, yeah, I believe there is a need. The nice thing about this twofold is that it is a grant, not a loan. I think we're starting to see some loan fatigue, and we've discussed that as a committee through the existing fund. And so I think there is a need. I think we'll see the benefits of this also are the fact that it's for the smaller business. So any, 5 and less employees, and then 6 to 50. And some of those maybe have missed the opportunity to benefit from PPP or couldn't afford the debt. So I definitely feel there's a need.
Mayor,
Okay, thank you. John?
Mayor John Cohen, Chamber of Commerce, and I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment, and would add that we've had local funds available since 2008 and really haven't used them. And I kind of liked Commissioner Jorgensen's analysis the other day when he said it's a rainy day fund and it's raining now. And I think that money, or this money, that if we, and Wendy, Ms. Lee's going to talk yet a little bit more about the current CDBG fund and how it really this potential grant. But these dollars that we have and potential we have to be awarded, if we can pump that into our local economy and save these jobs, it's more than just pumping the money into the economy. It's saving the jobs, which continues to generate income in the economy, which is going to be just absolutely essential going forward. We're not seeing the economic bottom at this point. It's how we prepare for the future that's got to be important. And the move made today in determining how this goes forward, I think, can play a big part in that.
Yeah, we want to keep those storefronts open and those businesses viable until we get out of this thing. If there's any other discussion, I will move for the vote. Would you call the roll?
Yes, this is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Wygand?
And I vote yes too. Motion carries. Great.
Mr.
Item
Mayor?
number 12. Oh, Wendy, I see your mobile office is still in touch.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. If you would indulge me, I'd like to go back then to the local revolving loan fund. That was the other part of that implications to the local before we go on to the next item.
Sure.
As both John and Paul mentioned to you, we did meet with our committee, which included John and Paul, and as well as Amy Finch, our clerk, and Laurel Gemso, our assistant finance director, and Richard Neinstead, our city manager. And we had a really good discussion about how could we propose to you to move forward with our current funds, because as you recall on Monday when we discussed this, in order to be able to draw down from the new grant, should it be awarded, we would have to have exhausted our local revolving loan fund down to $10,000 or less, which makes good sense. Why give a community money if they haven't already used what they have on hand? And so that's the opportunity that we have right now between now and, as Commissioner Skidmore said, possibly June 8th. We may have businesses that are in need now and don't or can't wait that long. So we discussed everything from doing a $5,000 grant and anything over that requiring a loan, or doing half and half. So if somebody wanted 20,000, they could get 10,000 as a grant and borrow 10,000, and a variety of options. But as Paul indicated to you, we really felt that there was some loan fatigue, that a number of people who had expressed interest in our fund were concerned about their ability to repay. Good caution, good prudence on their part, but it doesn't mean that they don't have significant need currently, because they've either closed or reduced their income so significantly that it's putting them at risk. Mortgages, rent, utilities, etc. And in some cases, we know that some businesses, because of the new requirements under COVID, in order to open, have a lot of extra expenses that wouldn't be typical for them and wouldn't be something that they can necessarily put into what they charge their customers. And so our final conclusion was that we would recommend to you that we continue to use the guidelines that you've put in place, but that we move from loans to 100% grants. Now, the business still has to qualify, meaning that it still has to retain low to moderate income persons. They do have to show us invoices for those expenses for whatever the amounts that they would like to receive. We would still recommend that they go through the full application process, that the committee reviews it, that it's recommended to the city manager, and that he signed or approved them in final. We are still having a little bit of discussion. We had some back and forth yesterday about some of those details, but that we finally concluded that leaving it up to the 20,000 within our current parameters. But if there was a business out there that needed a little bit more, that was a larger, maybe in that 5 to 10 employees range or something like that, they could still apply for this as a grant, but they would need to come to you, just as we've talked about with the new grant funds. The last thing I want to mention to you is that we recognize that trying to get the word out is always key. As you know, we had recently put up lots of postings and even banners and things that indicated we had loans. We would need to remove all of that and replace with some things, some information about grants. And to that end, we would like to not take applications for those funds until June 8th at 8:30 to give us time to do the marketing, redirect our fundings, and work out agreements that we may need to have. And the last recommendation we have to you is to make this retroactive. So the businesses that already did apply, that we have current loans on, some of which have already started paying, making payments, that we convert those to grants as well, because they are just as qualified as anybody that would be applying right now. I think I've covered most of what I needed to say to you, although I know that a memo was sent to you as well. But I'm happy to answer questions. We can do this by consensus. You've already adopted the guidelines. If you're comfortable with that, if you'd rather wait to a later point, we can do that as well. We can take applications for loans as we have been, but we don't want to take any applications that are full grants until you've endorsed that direction.
Okay. This is Mayor Tom Wygant. Got just a comment. With this grant and our CBDG funds, we're approaching almost $500,000 that we have supported our business community with, if they're all used, and we encourage those who can take advantage of to do so. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, one of the things that I thought Paul Bean said yesterday on the call that was really important was, oftentimes when we think about recruiting a large business here, we can get very focused on that. But what makes us attractive as a community, what makes us a great place to live, is all of these businesses. So retaining as many of those as we possibly can is essential to our ability to attract new citizens to live here, to attract students to the university and the college, and to attract that next business that we hope to have in Proximity Park.
Right. We do recognize the importance and the value they bring. Any other questions or comments?
Commissioner Skidmore, on Wendy, by doing this by a grant way of doing things, will that be bleeding down our revolving funds? So 3 years from now, when we're back to normal, will that fund still be available for people, or will it be nothing left in it?
So, excuse me, we have to get it down to 10,000. So presumably we could leave it right there and have a little bit. We do have a current loan that was done many years ago that is still making some payments. So it would have a little bit of funding if we so choose to leave it. But the key to the committee feeling that we should go ahead and do 100% grant is because if we had a business that came to us that wanted to retain jobs, let's say we exhaust all of those funds, and as you said, 3 years from now, someone has a situation that has put them in a position that they need to borrow, and they do have the low to moderate income positions, or they want to add a new line or something really significant to it, and they want to create jobs. Those businesses could still partner with us, and we could still apply to the state for economic development CDBG funds as a loan at that time. We don't have to have our own funds on hand to help them. We just have in the more recent years. But really what gave the committee great comfort was we could still always help a business in that circumstance going forward.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is Richard Ninestead, City Manager. Commissioner Skidmore, the long and short of this is we will not be able to access the $300,000 unless we spend that fund down, and that comes directly from Kansas Department of Commerce.
Yeah, Commissioner Skidmore, yeah, I forgot about that 10,000 part. You're right. We got to have that to get the 300,000. I understand that now. And also, I did want to mention Commissioner Jorgensen said something the other day about the PPP loans, and he's exactly right. There were a few people that did not qualify for whatever reason. They kind of fallen through the cracks, and this would certainly provide a means for them to keep their businesses going.
Okay.
I have Mayor Wygant, Commissioner Jorgensen. I do have a question for the committee. We had placed a limit where it would have above which the applications would have to come back before the city commission for the loan program. And you may have said it, but I lost it with the background noise that was on the call here. Are you looking at a limit for the grants as well?
So what we recognized as a committee, this is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development, was that if we retain the guidelines as we have them, which allows for loans or grants, we could, as a committee, approve something up to 20,000. But if there was a business that came forward that needed more than that, per the guidelines, they would just come to you. And at that point, if it was a grant more than that, we just felt that it would be important for that project to come to you. Going forward with the new grant funds, should we receive them, they all would come to you. But this would just allow us in the short run to go ahead and process those grants much more quickly if you were agreeable to it by using the same guidelines we have and delegating that authority to the city manager for those under 20,000.
See.
Okay. Any other question, commissioners? Well, we need a motion to, have we got one of those already on the table, don't we?
Mr. Mayor, this item, the vote was to approve the resolution.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. On the matter of moving the funds from loan to grant, and we can ask the city manager, I think we just felt like if there was a consensus among you, it is still per the guidelines which you did adopt. But if you prefer to have a separate action, that is, we just didn't call it out separately on the agenda.
Okay. Okay. We've already voted on that item 11 then.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Richard Nine said city manager, and perhaps we need some city attorney guidance here, but I would prefer that you give that authority by motion if you agree that we should convert that fund to grants.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Jorgensen.
Yes.
Hearing that, I move that we open our present loan program to allow for grants using the same criteria as before, and convert the existing loans to grants that have been made.
Commissioner Crowley will second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that?
Now, Commissioner Skidmore, I just have a question. We've got some loans that have been in place for a long, long time, haven't we? Would that include all those from a couple years ago? They're still paying?
My motion would just be for the COVID-19 program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is that an amendment motion?
Yeah, that'd be a friendly amendment to the motion.
City Clerk Finch notes that change.
Okay. Would the clerk call for the vote?
Yes, this is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Wygand?
I vote yes. Motion carries. Item 12.
Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. Ordinance amending municipal code to modify requirements for sidewalk dining during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Food service establishments can apply for a conditional waiver from the prohibition use of sidewalk dining for private purposes. And Wendy, we ask for you to comment on this.
This is Community Development Director Wendy Lee. The city manager proposed that we consider offering some opportunities for our local businesses who, because of the COVID social distancing requirement, are limited in how many patrons they can have in their restaurants. And so we've had a sidewalk dining ordinance for many years, but this proposal would modify the process just a little and allow and maybe even encourage businesses, if they felt like they needed the additional dining in order to keep their business operating fully, that they would be able to go onto the sidewalk in the right of way and have a table or two and some chairs for outside dining. It does have a sunset clause, and the document was drafted by our city attorney. So if you have any questions, city manager, city attorney, or I can all address them.
Okay. Any other questions? This is to aid in the trying to get enough folks into those restaurants to make it a viable business. That's good. Any questions or comments on this before we ask for the motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner Kaler.
Sarah Kaler speaking. I move that we approve the ordinance amending the municipal code to modify the requirements of sidewalk dining.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Crowley, I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. I would call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Mayor Wygand?
I vote yes. Motion carries. Item 13.
Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. Proclamation recognizing May 2020 as Mental Health Month.
A proclamation to increase awareness and understanding of mental health and the need for accessible services for all with mental health conditions. This is certainly the month to work on that. Do we need, we have made this proclamation, we've read this proclamation. We just adopt that proclamation by consensus is my understanding.
Mr. Mayor, City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. I don't believe you need to take any action on that.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Richard Nine says city manager, city clerk is exactly right. And you do not need to take action on a proclamation. In fact, I believe the statute gives authority for the mayor to issue a proclamation. So not that
Okay.
you go
I
off
s-
the deep end, but
I so issue. Thank you, City Manager Neinstead. Now it's your turn. The report by the city manager.
so Richard Neinstead, city manager, just a couple of things. I want to let you know that the people that the persons we have helping us on the loan committee, Amy Finch, Laurel Gimzo, Paul Bean, John Cohen, and Wendy have all worked their hearts out on this. And they spend a lot of time taking these applications seriously and promoting them. And this group has spent a lot of time yesterday talking about the recommendation that came to you today and how we can better market this. So I think it's important for you to understand how dedicated they are to this. It brings a number of different disciplines into the same room to help Wendy and I work through those issues. And I would also encourage you as elected officials in your group of contacts, in your group of citizens, please promote the loans, please promote the grants, promote this program, especially with those business owners that you know that are operating a business up and down Main Street, because that is what this program, and if we're approved, the state program is all about. Now, all you simply have to say is, hey, did you know there are programs available? Contact so-and-so at City Hall, and they will take it from there. But what we have found, all of us on the committee in anecdotal discussions with business owners out there, is that there is a reluctance to come forward, and we need to help them get over that, because we cannot help the businesses unless they let us know. And we absolutely do not want anyone to fail on Main Street or in our community. The money that we will have available could very well help make the difference in those doors staying open. So much for my Lutheran homily on that topic.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. This is the mayor, and that is that's well said, that we should all let folks know. The worst that can happen is maybe they don't qualify, or they and the best that can happen, they don't need it. But it seems to me like something you ought to check into if you're a business and you've been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think we're trying.
Mr. Mayor, Richard Ninestead, City Manager, one more thing. We have now we will move into phase 2 on this Friday. The governor has issued the updated executive order. There are some nuances in there dealing with crowd size. I believe we go to 15. There are some other things in there. I will email you a copy of that. We will revise it to our workplace environment, and there are also some safe guidelines for our citizens to follow in order to have a safe holiday weekend and mitigate the spread of COVID. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. We come now to reports by the city commissioners. Commissioner Kaler, do you have something?
I have none at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Crowley,
I have no report.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
I might just say a few words. We've been blessed in Franklin County by not having any COVID-19 deaths. We have had a number of cases, and I think because it has not risen to the level of somebody losing their life within our community, that some people have maybe minimized the risk that the COVID-19 virus actually is. When I go out, I always wear a mask when I'm going to a store in public, and I may be the only one in the store that has a mask on. I think I didn't talk a lot about it when it happened at the end of March, but I lost my first cousin, Terry Jorgensen, who was a Vietnam Navy veteran, to the COVID-19 virus. And he was healthy, went in for a shoulder surgery at the beginning of March, and was checked out, and he died. He got sick and died after he was home for 3 days from hospital. So the risk is real. The virus is real. And we need to take our steps that we can in order to avoid the spread within our community. So please do as they tell you, wear a mask in public, wash your hands, and if you're not able to wash your hands, use hand sanitizer. So that's my Catholic homily for today.
Thank you, Commissioner Jorgensen. Commissioner Skidmore.
Well, I've just got something to tag on to what Commissioner Jorgensen said, and it's right, there's no deaths. That's wonderful. I also believe there are no new cases in Franklin County this week, and that's the first time that's happened for quite a few weeks. And I think it shows you how the people are doing as they were told to do and suggested to do, and to be careful. Like we've been telling them, wash hands, wear a face mask, and keep your distance. And so it shows that it really, truly works. And so, you know, a test of any community, the resiliency of any community is when it's tested by fire. And I think we've been through a tough time. We're not through it yet, of course. We've still got some time to go, but it's encouraging what I'm seeing so far. And just encouraging people to continue to practice these safeguards, make sure that we'll get through this thing in good shape.
Well, thank you, commissioners, for your comments. From the mayor's viewpoint, the last few sessions that we have met have been dedicated mostly to the solving the financial issues brought about by COVID-19. I think that we can, as a city and a community, support our local businesses, not only by purchasing from them, but supporting them financially in any way we can. I think that speaks well of our city and speaks highly of the opportunity that they have to continue to exist throughout this crisis, and hopefully that we aren't talking about this 6 months from now. But I encourage anyone who may be able to use some funds or is thinking of closing their business because of their financial concerns to talk to our city manager and community development director. With that, I will do the announcements. We had ordinarily scheduled a City County USD 290 luncheon that has been canceled today. We will have a special called meeting at 1 o'clock, and that'll be via Zoom this Friday, May 22nd. And then our Memorial Day, our study session is canceled. City offices will also be closed. Our next study session is June 1 at 4 o'clock, and that'll also be by remote Zoom. And our regular meeting will be at June 3rd, 7 o'clock in the evening, also via Zoom. So with that, thank you all very much for your input and your attendance today. And we will get with this again Friday at 1 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned at 10:44.